Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Trophy Case Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pucci, and today's pod is all about round one of the NBA playoffs. We had some great matchups, some great games like we expected, even some snoozers in there, like the Cavs matchup or like the Thunder matchup. But even in series like that, there's definitely still some highlights and stuff to watch out for. But overall, it was just great basketball. Obviously, there was a lot of narratives and a lot of storylines going into this playoffs, and we got to see it in full force, especially in round one. So it's been a great start to the NBA playoffs. And yeah, let's hop into it. So jumping right into it, starting off in the Western Conference, I'd figured we start off with the least interesting of the matchups. Thunder taking on the Grizzlies. Obviously, this kind of went how everybody expected. Thunder just kind of put belt to ass for 4 straight games. First game came out, blew out the Grizzlies, then beat them again pretty handedly. And then obviously Ja goes out. He even ends up saying that he had the Thunder figured out before he got hurt, which is pretty comical because they literally just got blown out in every game. But even in the last 2 games, I forget if it was game 3 or game 4, where the Grizzlies actually did have a lead. They ended up blowing it in typical Grizzlies fashion. Thunder come storming back. Thunder obviously weren't playing around in this series, take down the Grizzlies in 4, kind of like how everybody expected. Some people might have given the Grizzlies a game. But overall, this is kind of just to be expected, especially with the Thunder having obviously championship aspirations. I thought the Grizzlies, obviously throughout their regular season, it wasn't what they expected at all between getting their coach fired, Ja being in and out of the lineup. And even when he was in the lineup, he just wasn't that great. So I'm not sure really what the next step is for Memphis. I don't know if they're a team that makes a run at a Kevin Durant. I feel like that would be a pretty big splash. But I feel like the Grizzlies have a lot of pretty good players like Ja, like Bane, like Jaren Jackson Jr. But they just don't have another star outside of Ja. And I mean, Triple J is a star, but more on the defensive end, way more so than the offensive end. And even Ja, he hasn't been the same player he was even a year or two ago. And obviously that can be contributed to injuries and the off the court issues and stuff like that. But Ja just hasn't been the same player, and thus the Grizzlies just haven't been the same team. So yeah, so they go out in 4 in a little sweep to the Thunder. So next up is Nuggets Clippers. Honestly, either the best or second best series of the first round, depending on if you're a Warriors fan or not. But honestly, this is just everything you look for in a basketball series if you're a fan. Um, Crazy buzzer beaters, whether it was the Aaron Gordon buzzer beater, vintage Kawhi game, which was honestly, I think it was game 2, was the best Kawhi game that we've had in maybe a half decade, like legitimately. Harden played really well at the beginning of the series. And then obviously, like I said, you can go back and check the tape in my predictions video, but the inevitable Harden playoff stinker was on the horizon. And it is no coincidence that as the games got more important and as the stakes got higher, Harden just got worse and worse. Obviously, that game 7, he just was nowhere to be seen. I think Norman Powell took more shots than him. I saw just deferring, and when he wasn't deferring, he just shots weren't falling for him. I have it pulled up here in game 7s. In Harden's career in game 7s, he averages 19 points, 8 assists, 4 turnovers, so a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And then he's shooting 35.5% from the field and 22.4 from 3. Um, Honestly, like this shouldn't really surprise anybody. This is who Harden's been throughout his entire career. And being a Sixers fan, we saw it when he was in Philly. Obviously, played really well. Won them a game against I think it was the Celtics 2 years ago when Embiid was out. Wins you a game. Everybody's high on the Harden horse, thinking that like this could finally be the year where it's different. It just never is, unfortunately, for Harden. But yeah, like I was talking about earlier, the Aaron Gordon inbound dunk, tip in, whatever at the buzzer that stole that game from the Clippers, that honestly just ripped their heart out. Because then in the game 7, the Clippers come out and kind of just rolled over. Like I said, Harden wasn't himself, or rather was himself, you could say. Kawhi didn't play that well. Norman Powell didn't play that. Like the whole team just didn't play that well. The Nuggets just came out on a mission, and you saw how and why they have the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. Jokic throughout the entire series, just the best player on the court, except for that one Kawhi game. But yeah, I mean, especially with players like MPJ in that game 7, once the Nuggets are up like 15 points, 20 points, and MPJ can take these like crazy contested threes with no real like downside, he's just piling it on. So yeah, that game 7 kind of got away from them pretty quickly. The Clippers weren't really competitive in that game. I mean, the Nuggets jumped out to a big lead pretty early and kind of just held on to it. Obviously, Russ with the emphatic slam, getting the tech, hanging onto the rim, telling the Clippers to go home. Overall, it was honestly a really good series. And this is honestly kind of how I thought, a little preview here, I thought the Bucks series would go. I gave Giannis the credit of kind of being the best player in the world, like Jokic. And when you have a player like that, you can win any series, especially against a team that has a Harden or a team that has like a, knock on wood, thankfully it didn't happen, but a Kawhi with an injury history. But it ended up not really mattering in the Bucks case. But yeah, Jokic just shows why he's the best player in the world. Nuggets, again, just find ways to win games. And you can see that championship DNA is still there, even without guys like KCP. It's definitely still there with obviously their core. So yeah, Nuggets looking to make another finals run, and they get it done here in 7. Next up is Rockets Warriors. I was going to do Lakers T-Wolves, but I figured I'd wait to the end of the Western Conference to do that because obviously I had the most riding in that series. But Rockets Warriors, another great series, another 7-game series. I thought it would have been interesting to see how the Warriors and Curry fans cover up if Curry were to blow another 3-1 lead. That's neither here nor there. I thought Curry overall played above average, though. He had a couple rough games mixed in there, but that can be attributed again to the Rockets' great, like, young athletic defense. You can see definitely at some points they just kind of say anybody but Curry. You know what I mean? Like if Draymond's going to hit a 3, that's fine. If Pod's just going to hit 5 threes and beat us, that's fine. But a lot of the times you could just see that their defensive mindset was just blitz Curry. You saw Dylan Brooks hitting Curry's hand. But yeah, I just think Curry's kind of in like the Goldilocks zone of when he doesn't play great, nobody really says anything. But when he does play great, it's on like the headlines. But that's neither here nor there. Warriors pull it out in 7. I thought this series kind of confirmed everything that we thought that we knew about the Rockets. Great, like I said, young, athletic, defensive-led team, but they just don't have that go-to scorer, especially down the stretch. I thought overall Sengun played great. Obviously, he had that one runner bunny where he missed it towards the end of the game, and that I don't want to say costed them the game because a lot of other there was still time left and Sengun played good throughout that entire game. So I don't want to say he costed them the game, but obviously you make that it's possibly a different outcome. Jalen Green really struggled outside of that one game where I think he dropped like 37. It was just really rough for him all around. And this series really goes to show, like, do the Rockets make a run at a Kevin Durant? I know that I said that earlier, but like this, I feel like this is a team that's significantly more realistic, especially when you look at the assets they have to give up, the draft capital, like the young players. I think it would just make more sense, or maybe even for a Giannis trade. I think if you're looking to do a Giannis trade, that's when you look to get rid of a Sengun or a Jalen Green. Obviously, you want to hold on to Thompson no matter what. But if you wanted to go for a KD, I think you could hold on to Sengun and maybe get rid of Green or some of these other guys like a Jabari. But I don't know. I think, again, like we'll talk about this later, but I think the price for Giannis is a lot higher than people think. Obviously, the Luka trade kind of messed a lot of stuff up, but I think the Bucks are going to want good young players. I think they're going to want, obviously, draft capital. But the Rockets are one of those teams that can do it, and this series kind of proved like they have the defensive capability to keep up with a team like the Warriors and to throw bodies and players at Steph. But they just don't have the offensive punch, kind of like that it's been all year. And an interesting stat I saw is that the Rockets have the second most assists per or second least assists per game in the entire league. It's them and a bunch of teams who are some of the worst teams in the league in terms of like team assists. So obviously they've kind of been relying on their defense throughout the year. Even though their offensive rating is, I think, 13th in the league, which obviously isn't horrible, a little bit above average. I just think that's a little bit misleading. I just think their offense is a little bit flawed overall. And it showed its head in this series, especially in Game 7. So yeah, Warriors move on. I did predict the Rockets. I was thinking Rockets in 7, and honestly, the more I thought about it, the more it got closer to a Game 7. I just thought, comes down to Game 7, who's the best player? It's clearly Curry. Even though the Rockets might have the second, third, and fourth best player in that, you could make an argument for. Curry's still just an all-time legend and a top 15 player of all time, so you got to give it to him there. And even though that first half in Game 7 wasn't the best, he came out in the second half and started making some shots and started making some big and timely shots. So credit to Curry there. But yeah, Warriors move on in 7. So here it is, finally, my Lakers versus Timberwolves round 1 reaction. I have some notes down here, so excuse me glancing down every once in a while because this series was just infuriating as a LeBron and as a Lakers fan. They honestly had it most of the time. They just choked it away literally almost every time. I have it written down here, like, I mean, me especially, like, I knew the Lakers' flaws going into this series. I watched more Lakers basketball than any other team. But I really did just think that LeBron and Luka down the stretch in a close fourth quarter would just be too much for the other team to overcome. And obviously we saw in this series that just wasn't the case. We saw the role players obviously didn't really step up, but can't really blame them too much. Like the roster's just not that good. Like I have one of my notes here, roster just not that good. You saw it. JJ only trusts 5 guys to play. We saw it in the second half of game 4, I believe it was, when it was kind of the winner go home game. JJ plays 5 guys throughout the entire second half. I just think honestly that was idiotic, especially for like if you want to do that, whatever. But I just think at the end or beginning of the third or fourth quarter, you have to sneak 2 minutes for LeBron. I mean, asking a 40-year-old guy who's played more minutes than anybody else in the history of the NBA to go out there and not take a break and play the entire second half is just honestly kind of stupid in my opinion. You saw it down the stretch there. LeBron takes like a tired 3, misses it. Luka just doesn't get it done in the fourth quarter. Like I haven't written down here, the Lakers just shot themselves in the foot in the fourth quarter. They just let the Timberwolves hold on for too long. Timberwolves are lurking third quarter, and then they go on that push, and the Lakers just can't withstand whatever push the Timberwolves end up going on. I have it here, the Lakers in the fourth quarter. This is their fourth quarter scoring, right? 17 points game 1, fourth quarter. Then 13 points in game 2 where they end up getting the win. Even though they got the win, 13-point quarter is not going to cut it. Then 20-point quarter, which is their only 20-point quarter of the series, then 19, then 16. So, like, if you just do the math, like, obviously that's not enough points. It literally just comes down to them crumbling in the fourth quarter. And whether that's LeBron's just old and he just doesn't have it anymore, but it's weird. Like, he had it defensively. You saw it with the steals and the blocks in the earlier games. Like, LeBron obviously still has some left in the tank. I think he was just kind of using his energy more on the defensive end and kind of trusting Luka to take care of it on offense. But obviously that didn't happen. I thought overall Luka played good. Obviously for anybody else's standards, it would be great. But for Luka's standards, it just wasn't typical playoff riser Luka that we're used to. I don't think he was necessarily the problem once again, but I don't know. Lakers have a lot of problems. It was just really evident in this series. Again, the center thing, game 5, Lakers don't play Jackson Hayes at all, especially when Rudy Gobert has the game of his life and almost drops, like, what was it, 30 and 20? Like, it's just literally ridiculous. Like, why not just throw him out? Why not? JJ threw in Maxi Kleber, who hasn't played a game in the Lakers jersey. He literally has not suited up once for the Lakers, and he thought it was a good idea to throw him out there, game 5, season on the line, game in the balance. In my opinion, that's just the type of stuff that's a little bit frustrating. Even if Jackson Hayes wasn't giving you exactly what you wanted, I thought he was a way better lob threat than Maxi Kleber, especially playing alongside Luka. You saw it in the beginning of Luka's Lakers tenure when he was getting those lobs to guys like Hayes and Dorian Finney-Smith. I think that's obviously where Luka excels. This Mavericks team last year when he went on that finals run, they just had way better defensive pieces around Luka to the point where, like, if Luka gets blown by, you have a Daniel Gafford or a Derek Lively sitting in the paint or a PJ Washington that can slide over and help. The Lakers just don't have they just don't have that roster at all. And even on the offensive end, when Luka can throw those lobs to, like I said, like a Derek Lively or a PJ Washington, it's just fast transition points, just easy points, to be honest. And the Lakers get no easy baskets. If you watched any part of the series, it's very evident. Nothing's ever easy for the Lakers. Whether it's like a Luka miracle, like step back 3 when he's in isolation with Gobert, or at like the end of the buzzer, or at the end of the shot clock that gets people excited. But there was never anything easy for the Lakers. They never ran any actions or any set plays really that were efficient and worked. A lot of the time, I just thought that Luka ISO on Gobert just took the Lakers out of their offense and was really just not that effective. In previous years, that Luka on Rudy ISO, Luka just cooked him every time. But in this series, it was a lot more even. I thought Rudy really held his own for the most part. But yeah, really, really rough series for the Lakers. Again, now where do they go from here? You would think after this series that your number one priority would be to get a center. Now, I don't know exactly who that is. Do you go back and try to get a Mark Williams? Do you go and get a Miles Turner, whose name has been on the trade block for forever? I don't know. Again, I don't get paid to make those types of decisions, but Rob Pelinka, in my opinion, isn't the best at what he does either. A lot of people gave him credit for that Luka trade. I don't give him much credit for that at all. He basically just picked up the phone and said yes. if Nico Harrison calls you in the middle of the night and says you want Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis, you say yes 1,000 times out of 1,000. So I don't give him too much credit there. I think overall the roster was flawed, like I said, and I knew that going in. I really did just think that the pairing of LeBron and Luka would be overwhelming, but obviously it was not. Lakers get dominated in 5. And before I end the Lakers segment and the Timberwolves, I just want to say credit to the Timberwolves. Obviously, they played phenomenal. Whether it was Ant when he had it going or when he didn't have it going, the role players, Naz Reid, Dante, other guys, Julius Randle, shout out to him. Known usual playoff. I wouldn't say choker because he's not usually the focal guy like a Harden, but known playoff struggler. You know what I mean? He's definitely has his struggles before, but in this series, he was great. Had big threes, big shots, was really good at the line. Yeah, overall, the Lakers were just outplayed, outcoached. Rough series for them. But yeah, the Timberwolves showed throughout the regular season, the reason the Timberwolves were such a low seed was because they couldn't finish games, right? Like, obviously, you look at that team on paper, and they should be a higher seed than what they were. Obviously, they started off a little bit rough with Julius Randle trying to figure out his fit alongside Gobert and Chris Finch trying to work him in with Ant and everything. But since the All-Star break, man, they were a really good team, and they just couldn't finish down the stretch of games. They just couldn't close, whether it was those last couple minutes or those clutch points in the game. They just couldn't execute. But obviously here, the script flipped. They out-executed the Lakers. So, yeah, it goes to show you anything can happen in the playoffs. But yeah, they take down my Lakers in 5. Rough one here. Starting off the East with what was, in my opinion, and I think in everybody's opinion, the most least interesting series of them all. Honestly, not too much to say about this series, and no point, in my opinion, was it super interesting. You just saw why the Cavs were the best regular season team, or at least in the East. Just way better starting 5, way better off the bench. Ty Jerome does his thing once again. And yeah, this series just wasn't that interesting. You saw in game 4, the Heat were down, 900 million. I have a stat here, most lopsided playoff series in NBA history. The Cavs beat the Heat with a point differential of plus 122 in 4 games, which is absolutely outrageous, which is now the highest win margin in any series in NBA history. So yeah, not too much to say there. Cavs move on with no resistance. Man, this next series is just really tragic for the Bucks. Dame obviously battles back from a blood clot, comes back to play in the game 2, I think it is, gets hurt in game 4, tears his Achilles. He's out for likely all of next season. And now the real question is, outside of Bucks losing the series again in the first round, the big storyline is what's going to happen with Giannis. Where does he go? What's his future if he stays in Milwaukee? I read a report recently that Giannis is going to meet with the team and the coach and like the front office and everything in the summer to discuss his future. And honestly, like, this is just worst case scenario for the Bucks. You kind of go all in with the Damian Lillard trade. You trade away Chris Middleton. You trade away Drew Holiday to kind of like retool. You get a Kyle Kuzma who you thought was going to contribute kind of more than he has. And man, Giannis does all he can once again. His stat lines are ridiculous. He's putting up like 35 and 20. And it's literally just not enough. So again, when he meets with the team in the summer, the reports that come out about that are going to be super interesting. Something to watch. I think we saw at the end there in game 5, Tyrese Halliburton's dad come onto the court and like get in Giannis's face, which I thought was crazy. I thought Giannis handled that pretty well. I know that situation's kind of over with now. I saw the dad ended up getting banned from the Pacers' future games, which is crazy. Halliburton had to come out in his post-game interview and like denounce his dad's behavior. But yeah, honestly, just a bad look for them. The question is now really, what does the Giannis trade package look like? If Giannis does ask out or he does decide that like his future is outside of Milwaukee, what does that look like? Like I said, I think a Giannis trade is way, way bigger than people think. Like I said, the Luka trade kind of messed some things up. I think it messed people's trade value perception, like, or their perception of how, like, what these guys go for. Kind of like how the Rudy Gobert trade a couple years ago did that when he went to Minnesota, where I think they got like 5 first-round picks. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I think if Giannis goes to a team like OKC, it's going to be for a Chet. It's going to be for like a J-Dub and picks, which I honestly think is worth it. That's obviously that's up for debate. Depending on what the Thunder do here, but like a team like the Rockets, like we talked about earlier, if they don't go for a guy like KD and they want to go for maybe more of like the timeline with an Amen Thompson, or not more of the timeline, but obviously Giannis is younger. But I think that would demand like a Sengun and a Jalen Green. And I think if you're the Rockets, you'd have to do that. I know there's some links to him going to Brooklyn, but in my opinion, then you're just in the same situation. Like if Giannis wants to obviously compete, right? And his mindset is I need to do more in this league. Obviously, he has MVPs, he has defensive player of the years, he's won a championship, he's won a finals MVP. If he's content with that, then I think he'll stay in Milwaukee. But I think the hints Giannis has given before, and just like the type of player, the type of person he is, I think he still believes that there's more for him to accomplish in this league, and I don't think you can fault him for that at all. But the question is like, would like the team like the Nets makes no sense to me, because then you're just in honestly a worse situation. I understand that the Nets have cap, and the Nets could hypothetically do something like they did a couple years ago when they got Kyrie and KD and then eventually Harden. But saw how that worked out, whether it was for injury or whether it was for the team being not that good. I don't know how that looks. But yeah, I don't know what Giannis's future looks like. They lose here again in first round, pretty dramatic fashion, only taking one game. And like I said, with Dame being out all next year, it really does beg the question of what happens with Giannis. And also what's kind of getting lost here is what happens with Dame. Does Dame just maybe look to retire? Does he come back missing a whole nother season? Then he comes back at what, like, I don't know, 36 years old? Like, it's just a lot to ask for a dude, especially of that age, especially coming back from an injury of that caliber. So yeah, the Bucks are in for an interesting offseason. But credit to the Pacers again. They get it done. Tyrese balled out. Benedict Mathurin balls out. Pascal played, I thought, a really underrated series, but Pacers get it done here in 5. Next, we got Knicks Pistons, a super gritty series. Honestly, a great series overall. I think at certain points it looked like the Pistons were really posing some challenges for the Knicks, but obviously the Knicks bounced back, won in 6 games. I thought overall, though, in terms of the Pistons, this was a great season. Nothing to hold their head low about at all. Obviously, the Pistons were just trying to come back from being the worst team in the NBA, that 27, 28 game losing streak. Any step in the right direction was honestly a huge improvement. And from them going from that to a really high playoff seed in the East, what were they, the 6th seed, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah, 6th seed in the East. Took a team that might go on and compete with the Celtics here in round 2, took 2 games from them. Obviously, big steps from Cade Cunningham that you were really looking for. You love to see. Even especially guys like Malik Beasley, a little resurgence over there. Thompson, Jaden Ivey before he got hurt was playing really well. But yeah, honestly, a great step in the right direction for the Knicks. I think in that game 1, they really had it. And obviously that could have flipped the series, end up losing 4-2. If that's 3-3, there's a game 7 there. But the Knicks were down by a lot. I forget how much exactly, but the Knicks were down big in the 4th quarter. Pistons looked like they had it, and then they kind of just go ice cold in the last 6 minutes. Knicks really show their experience. Pistons show their inexperience. Knicks end up taking that game 1, and then obviously eventually go on to win in 6. But again, like I said, great season for the Pistons. It's going to be really interesting to see this next series for the Knicks side of point of view, because the Knicks have gone in and basically spent an entire offseason and spent basically the past 2 years building a team to beat Boston. They went out and gave up all those picks for Bridges. You go out and you trade for Karl Anthony Towns. You bring in an OG Anunoby. It's going to be interesting to see how they match up with the Celtics, because like I said, like this is what they've been building for. Pistons were kind of just the first team in the way of that. I thought, again, the Pistons had a chance in this series, but once you saw game 1 and once you saw them just kind of crumble, you kind of saw that the lights were a little bit too bright for the Pistons at this moment. But again, nothing to shy away from their end. Great season, great stuff to build on over there in Detroit. But yeah, again, Knicks move on. Really good playoff win for the Knicks, honestly. Now they move on to round 2, where it could be the biggest series in New York this century, coming against the Celtics. So yeah, moving on next to the Celtics. Here's the other side of that round 2 matchup with the Knicks. We got the Celtics taking on the Magic. Credit to the Magic. They were able to take a game, a little gentleman's sweep here. A lot of people didn't give them enough credit to be able to take a game from the defending champion Celtics. But this series, even with Jaylen Brown's knee being a little weird, and even Tatum struggling a little bit in the beginning, you just saw why they're the champions. They're just better 1 through 5. They just have a better bench. Yeah, again, nothing too bad from the Magic's perspective. Another good year, a Paolo leap. Franz took another big step. You're hopefully looking at a healthy Jalen Suggs next year. But again, like I said about the Rockets, it's a similar type of team here, just with less talent, in my opinion. Defensive-led, defensive-minded team with just offensive struggles and offensively challenged. Their whole offense is kind of Paolo and Franz, and especially more so Paolo. And if he's not going out and giving you like 40, that's like half the Magic scoring right there. So I know obviously they struggle to break 100 most of the time. Celtics play great defense. Celtics also just hit and spray a bunch of threes. So wasn't the best recipe for success there for Orlando. Another round 1 exit. I don't know what the next step is here for Orlando. Like I've said before, this could be a KD or like a Giannis trade destination. But again, I'm kind of just saying that because a lot of these teams that are younger, who are kind of needing something to get over that hump, I think are all a contender for both of those players. But yeah, a solid season from the Magic. Can't do much here. You draw the Celtics round 1. You're just going to get steamrolled. So before we get out of here, I just kind of want to talk about some of my most key storylines heading into round 2. So starting off, I wanted to talk about Anthony Edwards. Can he keep up this phenomenal run? Obviously, last year taking out Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. This year taking out LeBron and Luka. More so LeBron in terms of like the legacy status, but taking out LeBron and Luka in round 1 in 5 games, where he honestly, I think it's fair to say he outplayed both of them. And now he has a matchup set up with Steph in round 2, where the Timberwolves could go on and do the same thing they did against the Lakers. I'm not sure if it would be in 5 games, but they're definitely capable of winning this series. And with Anthony Edwards getting to the hoop the way he can, and now this year obviously adding the 3-ball to his game like Steph, you could really see him taking another big step this year and seeing him and the Timberwolves end up in the Western Conference Finals. Second thing I wanted to talk about was Jokic versus Shea in round 2. Obviously, the Thunder going up against the Nuggets. Battle of the MVPs. I know it's interesting that the NBA is not going to announce who the MVP is to after this series. So obviously, whoever loses this series is going to be under a lot of scrutiny, especially if it's Shea. If the Thunder lose this series and then he's announced as MVP, which me and I think a lot of other people expect to happen, I know he's going to get a lot of hate online. I don't think it's warranted. Shea's obviously a phenomenal player. Great season this season. Put up all the stats, all the advanced numbers, all the signature moments that you would want from an MVP. But seeing what Jokic just did in round 1 against the Clippers, and I'm recording this after game 1 just happened last night, and seeing him put up, 40 and like 24 last night. I think a lot of people are going to be riding high on Jokic, and really, really low on Shea if the Nuggets do end up pulling out this series and Shea ends up being named MVP. But I think Shea, again, obviously can be right there with the Jokic. I think Shea's team is more talented, so I could obviously see Shea going out there and averaging 35, 8, and 5 for the rest of the series, and the Thunder winning in 6 or 7, and then all of a sudden the entire discussion is different because then you're looking at his MVP different. You're looking at, he just took out Jokic. He balled out. So yeah, big series for Shea, big series for Jokic. It's going to be really interesting to see how they match up and see the individual performances from two of some of the best players in the league. And then finally, like I talked about earlier, the Celtics-Knicks matchup to me is just super interesting because like I talked about, the Knicks literally built a team to beat the Celtics. They're saying that we have a Jalen Brunson for your Jason Tatum and a Karl Anthony Towns for your Brown and an OG Anunoby for your Kristaps Porzingis and a Mikal Bridges for your Derek White and Josh Hart for your Drew Holiday. Like they're just trying to do the same thing basically with great starting 5 on great starting 5. Now, obviously the Celtics have the advantage when it comes to the bench. Like Peyton Pritchard's been one of the best 6-man coming off the bench in the entire league. Sam Hauser's really good. Luke Cornett, stuff like that. They're just really deep, obviously. But yeah, the Knicks are built to beat a team like this. So you give up all those picks for Bridges, you make the big trade for Cat, you get rid of Julius Randle, you get rid of DiVincenzo before the full Villanova Knicks can kind of play together. So yeah, obviously the Knicks have a lot riding on here, and so do the Celtics. Celtics defending champions, everybody expects them to kind of be on a crash course with the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. So if they do end up going out here and what would be honestly a pretty shocking upset to the Knicks. Then you start asking questions about the Celtics and where do they go from here? Obviously, they're going to be over the cap. They've been spending a bunch of money to keep all these guys together. So what happens to a Horford? What happens to a guy like Drew Holiday, or even a Porzingis? So yeah, again, some really interesting storylines over here in the Eastern Conference. But that's going to do it for this pod. I really hope you guys enjoyed. This was my full reaction to the first round of the NBA playoffs. I'll make sure to do this for round 2, and then obviously the conference championship and the finals once that rolls around. But yeah, I thought it was a great first round, great start to the NBA playoffs. And I honestly think round 2 is just only going to be better. The matchups going into round 2, we saw that we could have had some real all-time classics. And although LeBron isn't there, I think we're still in for some really good, really phenomenal round 2 matchups. And yeah, I'm excited. I'll definitely keep you guys in the loop. I'm excited to hop back on here and talk about round 2 and talk about everything else that's transpiring in the NBA and in the sports world.